Welcome to the Doing the Most podcast. I'm Shannon Fairweather, and I'm your host. Today, I have a very special guest, everyone's favorite self-made millionaire, water enthusiast, business creative, Daniel Linger. Thank you for coming back on the show.
All right. What an introduction. Thank you for having me. I'm pumped to be back on here and talking about random awesome stuff that we're both interested in.
No, absolutely. And let's just get right into it. Today's topic you have been very excited to talk about.
Yeah.
I think you, right after the first episode, you were like, next episode, I want to talk about this. So I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, I've been interested in altered states, substances, and nootropics for a while, but specifically the past year. I
was gonna say at least a year.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit. What would you say was the first kind of instance that you were like, I'm interested in altered states? Like you kind of wanted to specify like exploring.
Yeah, I would say last anniversary when I got you that Mind Valley app, I really started diving into different meditations. I've been meditating for probably like 4 years now. Actually, probably longer than that, but like actually doing guided ones and doing it every day, probably like 3 or 4 years now. So I've always been hip to altered states and getting in alpha state, theta state, all that good stuff. But recently I've been just diving in more and playing around with nootropics in my work, like before I work and doing work when I'm on some kind of nootropic and doing breath work and just doing like quicker intermittent meditations. Like I've been doing these 7-minute meditations, and it's just crazy how quickly you change your state. And most recently too, I've been playing around with caffeine as a nootropic.
Yes, you have.
Yes.
So you touch on a couple different things there: meditation, nootropics, caffeine. Let's start out with, for those who don't know, what is an altered state?
All right, so most of our waking state is in beta brainwave, right? That's when you're doing stuff, you're juggling a lot of things around, maybe you're in traffic. If you're in traffic, you're driving a car, your brain is producing beta waves. When you first wake up, you're in alpha wave state. So, when you first wake up, hopefully if you've gotten a good night of sleep, you feel awesome, you wake up at the good time and maybe you go downstairs, you have your coffee and go sit outside or whatever. Like that is a very peaceful alpha wave state. So your brain waves are like smooth. When you're beta, they're a little more scraggly. So what most people refer to as an altered state is basically anything that's different than a beta wave, but you could even take beta wave and have that be an altered state if you amplify it with like caffeine and all these other things. So anything that's not your normal waking state is an altered state.
And something that I just want to touch on because I think it's an interesting point is I don't think the majority of people know that when you first wake up, you are in an alpha state. So what would you say to someone who's waking up and maybe not prioritizing those first hours? Yeah,
it's a really good question. When I was younger and I first got my first iPhone, I was feeling like on top of the world.
Big screen, baby.
For like 7 minutes because my dopamine was flying around. Yeah, when I used to, really in college, which is probably why I had a lot of issues in college, when I would wake up, one of the first things I would do is just check my phone and go on like fucking Twitter.
Right.
I have like 90 followers on Twitter or whatever, or Facebook or whatever, because, I just didn't know better. And if you're doing that, ask why you're doing that, and then ask what if you did something different. And then try that out for a couple days. What I usually do is, we could go into all kinds of different morning routines, but just do something that sets you up for success, whether that's yoga, working out, drinking a lot of water. And that first, I'd say hour
Literally
of the day.
Just even sitting outside and drinking water.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Instead of laying in bed, maybe that extra 20 minutes just scrolling. I think a lot of our listeners and a lot of people that I know can definitely relate to either doing that now or doing that in their past.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to that, but real quick about scrolling and all that stuff. Your brain only has a certain threshold for dopamine and serotonin and a lot of these, that's what social media is doing. It's giving you dopamine hits, and it's great. Social media is awesome if used properly. But if you're starting your day off just kind of exhausting some of that dopamine, anything you do after is going to lose some of the potency. Whereas if you're doing something like drinking water is not necessarily giving you dopamine. It's survival. You're almost like pushing your dopamine off. So that's really important. So don't just burn your dopamine first thing in the morning. It's really not that's not worth it, at least for me.
And you say that in the morning you're in an alpha state, which means your brain waves are what are they called? Brain
waves.
Brain waves. Your brain waves are at a certain frequency. So what happens if you wake up and you're in that state and then you go on a phone, start scrolling, or maybe do something that's not beneficial to that alpha state?
Yeah, it just snaps you right out of alpha state. I believe if you're on Instagram or social media or anything, you're immediately going to like that compare mindset. It's making your brain work in a certain way. And if you snap yourself right out of alpha state, then you're just going to miss out on all those benefits. Like when you first wake up, we just did this morning. It's a really good time to plan out what you want to do with your day, or what you want to do with your week, or what you want to do with your life, because you're calm. You're not worried about who's emailing me. Did Sophie like my tweet? Right?
Damn it, Sophie.
Fucking Sophie.
Give me a retweet just once.
You never retweet my stuff, Sophie.
You're not a true friend.
I'm unfollowing
Fuck
you.
Sophie.
I'm not going to your Christmas party. You're not invited to mine.
She must not like you. She didn't retweet it. I knew it. She's talked shit about you.
You know, I've never met anybody in my life named Sophie. So now
It's a cute name.
Now that we've had this, I'm gonna meet like 18 fucking Sophies.
I know.
But yeah.
But essentially what it does, how I picture it is, here you are, almost like close to, you're not flatlining, you're not dead, but you're in this calm state, and then when you put yourself first thing in the morning in a situation that disrupts it, you can almost physically see that, until you're in this beta state again, and it's a terrible place to start your day.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. If you've ever had to like wake up and just immediately do something, maybe you overslept and you immediately got to go to work, right? If you wake up and you do that, let's say you got to go to work, you got to go drive in traffic and you're late, so it's like extra rush hour, your day's fucked. Like nothing is going right for you that day, right? Because the first instances of your day is what your brain is kind of programming you to do for the day. It's what it expects. Right. It's like that expectation law where you kind of get what you expect a lot, which is why it's great to expect the most and do the most, et cetera, et cetera. Where like if you're expecting every friend you have to fuck you over, like you're probably just gonna have friends that fuck you over. It's just kind of how it works. So taking those moments to be calm, make sure you're expecting the best things out of your day. Like that's huge. It's gonna program your day, that first hour to 2 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have 2 points that I want to touch on. One, I just had this thought that, remember, like they used to always say, like breakfast is the most important meal of the day, which it's so not.
No.
We literally never eat breakfast. Not that we do everything right, but there's a lot of studies that show that.
A lot of good science.
A lot of good science that breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. But it's instead one of the most important times of the day, because therefore it sets you up for the rest of your day. So maybe instead of most important meal, it's the most important time. That's
a great point. Real quick, on breakfast, think about what breakfast is. It literally means break fast.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of times break fast is at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
I think we've gotten that saying messed up by saying, oh, it's the most important meal of the day. I love that. It's the most important time of the day.
It is the most important time of the day. And then the second point I wanted to touch on was, so caffeine for me, or coffee, or even some mud water, just some sort of small bit of caffeine in the morning mixed with this alpha state, like done with the right morning, has literally gotten me high on life before. That is an altered state, correct?
Yeah, well, that's also the THC I put in your coffee.
Yeah. No, sometimes it's been straight up coffee out on the porch, like 45 minutes into my day, no phones, nothing to really kind of shake up my alpha state, and I'll find myself almost in like a perfect flow state.
Yep.
What it feels. How would you describe like that sensation? What's going on?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. You say it gets you high on life. When I'm going to use marijuana as an example, when you're high on marijuana, you're like, oh, I'm high, right? When people get drunk, I rarely hear people say, oh, I'm high on alcohol.
Yeah.
I never hear anybody say that. I usually hear like, oh, I just smoked, I'm high.
Right.
So look at what happens to your brainwaves when you smoke weed or you take an edible or you vape or whatever way you want to get your THC. Your brainwaves start to slow down a little bit and they become less beta wave and they become more alpha wave, which is why if you microdose or you take like a dose you're used to, it can actually be easier to focus. Like I remember when I was first doing some marketing stuff like 3 years ago, I'd always like, I need to get in the zone, right? And a lot of people will relate to this, whether it's video games or making music or making films or whatever it is you're doing. Like a little bit of that will really help you focus.
A little bit of THC.
Yes, a little bit of THC. And I remember one of our partners, Chris, was like, I don't know how you can work when you're stoned. And I was telling him it's because what you relate to as high is you smoking a whole joint and you being so out of your mind, which can be fun, but not a good work environment. Right. You relate being high to just being basically too high to even do anything. You're like, your brainwaves are just so slow. I relate it to being shifting from that beta, like, oh, I got to do this. Like, I got to get back to that email. I got to do this. Then I just got to do what's in front of me, right? Shut some of that stuff off.
So it's all about what you relate to. And yes. I think something that's important to touch on early in this episode is that everything we're going to talk about, THC to meditation to nootropics to XYZ, it's all about what works for you. You know, even Jason Capital, who's millionaire at, I think, 25.
Yeah, I think so, 25.
Best-selling author, marketing beast. Yeah, he says he cannot work high. He smokes weed before bed, helps him sleep. So it's about knowing what works for you when. Yeah,
and I don't always do that. Like it's marijuana is a nootropic, right, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
But to wrap up the point that brought out this whole THC thing is you said you're high on life.
For sure.
When you're in that state, I think it's just important to make a note of, if you want to get high on life, it doesn't necessarily have to be, or if you want to get high, it doesn't necessarily have to be from alcohol, weed, or substance. It's just something to slow down your brainwave a little bit, right? And that could be having coffee in the morning,
right,
honoring that first 120 minutes of your day, or just meditating, or even working out for some people. That gets them in that flow state, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think my question there was, we wake up in this natural alpha state. Is it almost something to take advantage of and, you know, really enjoy so then you can reach that level, a kind of high on life? It's almost like a fast pass, a cheat code, or a shortcut to kind of this nice alpha state.
Yes.
You wake up there.
Yes. Like, it's easy to get back to the alpha state, but there's nothing like the morning alpha state.
No, for sure. And it's easy to get back to the alpha state, but it's also not.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely something that you have to put effort into, I'd say.
Absolutely. Sometimes, so I do all my creative work in the morning.
Yeah.
For the most part. Every now and then I'll do some stuff at night when the moon strikes right. But sometimes, like, I want to keep doing stuff. Say I'm making music or creating ads or doing something for like 6 hours. I take a little break and I'm like, I'm just hungry and I want like more. I want to create more. I want to do more. But I know I'm not in that alpha state. Sometimes I go meditate. And sometimes I like to convince myself, oh, I'm just back to it. So like I just woke up. In reality, it's really not.
It's really not.
It's really not. Your brain has used resources. It needs to recharge. The reason you kind of feel like that after meditation is because you've recharged a little bit. But there's nothing like the morning.
And that's an interesting point. You talk about doing your creative work first thing in the morning. Why specifically do you turn towards the creative stuff versus maybe emails, texts, business stuff, some annoying problem solving? If you're in this alpha state and it's possibly your best brain state, why aren't you tackling some really difficult things?
Well, sometimes the creative stuff is really difficult, and sometimes, look, if I've been away for like a month and I know I just have a bunch of stuff to get back to, I might need that alpha state to just catch up with everybody. But I think a trap that we often fall into is, you wake up, you're like, all right, open my computer, you had your coffee, whatever, you're doing your thing. You're like, all right, I'm going to get to work. You start scrolling through emails and checking on things. Like for me, a lot of my stuff is running ads. So I check on everything and I'll see like the costs and I'll get all that data. And that data is kind of like dopamine. So sometimes I need to be careful that I don't just get lost in that data and checking on things. Cause like I could lose 25 minutes to just checking on things, another half hour to emails, another 15 minutes of random distraction. All of a sudden 90 minutes or however much that is gone, where I could have used that. I say 90 minutes because that's a great flow interval. I could have used that 90 minutes to just go solve a difficult problem, make something new that I can later check on, or do something that's creative where I need all my brain resources. So I'm not going to waste, if your gas tank's at 100, like why are you going to waste 20% checking on emails when you can use that 20% when you're fried and you have like how much energy do you really need to check on your email? You might need to send a couple emails, like make sure nothing's important. But a lot of that stuff you don't need to be at your highest performance. Do that at like 3, 4 in the afternoon. Like that's usually when I'm checking on stuff. And then if there's a problem that I find during that checking, I might need to solve it there or I'll just solve it tomorrow morning.
And it's interesting too because I have totally found personally that if I start my day with emails and responding to texts and like small problem solving, almost like, oh, I need to turn my ads on, or I need to adjust this copy, or I need to help somebody with this, like a bunch of little tasks, I find myself losing that kind of morning flow a lot quicker.
Yeah, because you're not really in a flow state anymore. You're in a beta jump from one thing to the other, that's what beta waves are kind of used for. So it's adaptive. It's a good thing because like you need to be in that state sometimes. But you also got to remember what you do in the morning sets you up for the day. So if you're focused on doing small things and thinking small for the day, your day's probably going to be small. Whereas if you're thinking big, thinking creative, thinking, why am I doing it this way? What if I did it this way? How can I change this and do it bigger and better? Your life's probably going to be better.
Absolutely. And to go off of me and my high on life state, that is the morning, the alpha waves, a little bit of coffee, and usually something just kind of stimulate creativity, have that be journaling, a good conversation with you, or a book. I find that the flow state, which is absolutely an altered state, is incredible. And I'm reading Big Magic, thanks to my very good friend Liv Finocchio, who gave it to me for my birthday, by Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, who is a very, very well-known book. She was on the bestseller list for 3 years. Her book was turned into a movie. Phenomenal author, obviously has experienced some flow states. She talks about how when you allow yourself to enter these flow states, but then also trust her. The reason why the book is called Big Magic is because it's kind of like talking about the things that we don't know about. The universe is doing a bunch of things that we don't know about. And one of those things she talks about is flow states, and she kind of phrases it in a different way. And she says that she allows herself to get in a state where a genius almost comes and helps her. And she kind of shifts that perspective of, oh, she is a genius too. She puts herself in a state where she can accept help from the universe, a little genius. And she talks about how her greatest writings and some of her greatest work moments are these flow states where she gets a little bit of genius.
Well, love that. It's like calling a muse, calling upon a muse or deity. Yes. That's a really interesting way to put it. I could totally relate to that.
I think that's really cool. And a phrase she used, she was like, it's as if, you're putting the work in for sure. It's like you're traveling, you have all this luggage, you're walking to like your 5th terminal, but then all of a sudden there's one of those walking masters that kind of just help you walk along.
You become a vessel.
Exactly. It kind of just flows through her. So let's talk about that a little bit. And what is that altered state?
Flow state?
Yeah.
Therapeutic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of indicators that you're in a flow state. And if anyone wants to check more out about flow, the best resource I know is Stephen Kotler's work. Check out Rise of Superman. Check out the Flow Genome Project. There's a lot of good research done on flow that is awesome. I've went through a decent amount of that stuff, and I plan on going back. But I will say, if you're new to it, the best way is to just go do it and just go find something that gets you in flow, whether that's skateboarding or surfboarding, to go to Stephen Kotler.
Yes.
and being therapeutic. So flow state is, first of all, let's define it, is just when you're focused on one thing, you basically become that thing. You don't hear any distractions. Your mom's not asking you to come do the dishes.
Right.
If
Your phone's not dinging.
Your phone's not dinging. You don't get any notifications. If you're on a Mac, your fucking Gmail's not going everywhere. Like every time I try to use your damn computer, can't get anything done.
They're off now.
Get like 18 fucking notifications in 30 seconds.
Mac will hit me with like new update.
Shit drives me
every
crazy.
24 hours.
Drives me crazy. Like just let me work.
Yeah.
But none of that matters. If you have to go to the bathroom, like a lot of times you'll lose like sight that you have to go to the bathroom. All these little things that you just don't notice. You just notice what's in front of you, which is why the alpha state's great. And so that's what a flow state is. And everybody has their own ways that they get into flow state. There's a lot of different ones. What's really cool about flow states that I feel like not everybody mentions all the time is that they are therapeutic. It's very stoic to say that work is therapy, but I think it's really cool. And when you look at Stoicism, a lot of most successful teams and people relate to Stoicism. So you don't have to be all about being stoic, but take some pages out. Tom Brady, New England Patriots, probably the Tampa Bucks at this point.
Fuck.
God damn it. Too soon. Yeah, but I know Belichick was big on Stoicism, the whole Patriots organization. I'm sure Brady was too.
Define Stoicism.
There's a great book that we have in our bathroom on Stoicism. And it's like a code of beliefs that I think Marcus Aurelius put together and like a lot of the early philosophers put together. And it's a way of handling problems, and it's basically a philosophy for life.
Okay.
And it involves one of the great ones on the Patriots is do your part. You know, there's all these sayings about like, you know, you don't have to be everything. If you build a team, yeah, there it is. Do your job. So I'm not that bad. I'm not on Fairweather fans here, people, okay? I'm not a sports guy. I do what I can.
You were close. You were close.
I was close enough. But there's a lot of philosophies like that where it's do your job, or, you know, don't try to move the world in one day, you know, do little things that lead you up to, you know, all these like good little
nuggets. When you talk
nuggets.
about Tom Brady, flow, and Stoicism, where do those all connect?
Where the hell was I going with that now? No, I'm talking about work and therapy. So work and flow being therapeutic, right? So
right.
If you take Tom Brady's football away, he's not going to have that same therapy. And to come back to Steven Kotler, because Tom Brady's a little far out. Steven I think he had cancer, and
he was dead. He was dying.
He was like dying.
Oh my God, this story's unbelievable.
Yeah, he was dying like day by day. The doctor's like,
he had like severe Lyme disease or something.
Oh, it was Lyme disease.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And it had made its way into his brain, and he like couldn't remember people that he had met. Like if he met you at age 20, he wouldn't be able to know you.
He was literally forgetting people that he had met.
Lyme disease was literally in his brain, eating his brain alive.
He couldn't walk. He could barely walk.
Yep. And he was in Los Angeles, and one of his friends, she came over and just demanded that they go surfing. And he's like,
are you fucking kidding
Linda,
me?
like, I can't even fucking walk. I can barely eat. I'm like eating out of a tube. I can't go surfing. She's like, nope, you're going surfing. She stood there for a couple hours. Eventually, he's like, all right, I'm trying to go to sleep. Like, this woman won't leave me alone. Let's go surfing. So they carried him out to the van. And
literally carried him out to the van.
They went down to, Santa Monica Pier or wherever, and basically just kind of threw him in the water. And he figured it out. He balanced or whatever. And he got in this state where he describes it, he got into a flow state, right? And he's still weak, and he's still all, getting fucked up by this Lyme disease. But by the time he made it back to the shore, like, he could walk a little bit more, right?
He had one flow state, and then after that he fucking collapsed after the flow state. But when he was on the surfboard, he was like fully able.
Yeah, he was able to move, and he was able to surf somehow, despite not being able to walk.
And surfing is really difficult.
Yeah, it kind of is. But yeah, once he got back to the shore, he just collapsed.
Exactly.
His friends carried him home.
But they were like, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, and he reported being just significantly better that week. And then sure enough, a week later, she came back. She said, all right, let's go surfing again. And you kind of already know how the story goes. Got a little bit better.
Exactly.
Boom, 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 boom. And I think after a few months, he had beaten Lyme disease. It was gone.
It was terminal, wasn't it?
I believe it was terminal, but he he says he's 99% healed. The only thing that's left is if he met you before age 30, he might have a hard time remembering your face, but he'll remember who you are once he knows who you are.
Because the Lyme disease probably literally ate away part of his brain.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
No, it
so
did.
crazy, so crazy. So that shows the power of a flow state.
Yeah.
And how therapeutic it can be. But I think an interesting point as well is that a lot of the masters of what they do, have it be in music, business, poetry, art, etc., they talk about their best work coming from these flow states. So I think that's something that's super, super cool, is that it can not only be just from something like surfing or, skateboarding, skiing, exercise, but also from things that can make you money. And I think something that's really interesting is that I swear, like, this is like cracking the code. It's like, find something that gets you into a flow state that you love. Because I think it's hard to get into flow state doing something that you don't love.
I think it might be impossible.
I think it might be impossible as well. So essentially, you can't be a master of your work if you don't love it, because you're not really accessing these flow states.
Yeah, when I was working at Trader Joe's,
which could be a little that could be a little controversial there, like.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think you have to enjoy something to a certain extent. Like,
absolutely.
Like, do I love skateboarding? I enjoy. I haven't fallen in love. I kind of do.
Yeah,
but that's not the best
How about Tony
example.
Hawk? You think he loved skateboarding? Absolutely.
Probably.
Absolutely.
Dude
So
lives on a
therefore, he
skateboard.
loved it, was able to get into these flow states and just crush.
But there's
become a
little
legend.
things that, like, you don't necessarily have to love. Like, you might, let's call it working out, right? I feel like not everyone loves working out, but you can still get in that state. You have to enjoy it to some extent, or see some kind of positive benefit come from it. That's not like stacking cans at Trader Joe's. Like, I don't think I ever got to flow when I was organizing the bananas.
Or say if you have a certain job that might be making you money, but is like literally making you miserable, you're not going to get into a certain flow state that kind of allows you to reach that master level.
Yeah, which is why it's important to have something. Like, when I was going to school, I hated the schoolwork. Like, cannot describe how much I hated the schoolwork. The homework was terrible. I found the classes incredibly boring, and it was just like, it's like when you're on a plane and you don't have a movie to watch, you don't have a book, and you're just sitting there. And it's like, it's almost worse because someone's telling you stuff and you have to participate, kind of like, can't even fall asleep. And I hated it. Like, it was not for me. But what was my saving grace is that I always, even, starting junior year, which is kind of ironically kind of when I started to get better, like freshman and sophomore year of college, nightmarish for me, absolute nightmares. And then junior and senior year, I remember in my junior year, I like put up a little microphone in my closet and I patted it down. I didn't even use the closet for clothes. I like just folded shit under my bed. And I would just like record and I'd make music.
Not much has changed.
Pretty much. But I would like make music in this long, like, this tiny little room. There's like neighbors everywhere, and I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm
closet.
Yeah, I'm gonna zen in here. I'd close my curtains and shit. And I did that senior year too. When I moved to the frat house, I built a recording booth in my big bedroom, and I always had that to fall back on. Here's my point, is that no matter how much I hated the schoolwork, how much I had no idea where I was going. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do after college. I'm gonna be $50K in debt. I'm fucked. Like, all these terrible thoughts. Like, no matter how bad that was, I could always come back, take a hit of my solo air riser, and get a little stoned, and I could make music. Didn't matter if it sucked. Didn't matter if I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't matter if I even put it out. I got that flow state where no one could bother me. And guess what? At the end of that, you've seen this. At the end of that flow state, I'm on top of the fucking world. I'm high. Yeah. Like, when I'm down in the studio and I come back, all of a sudden I'm like this new person, right?
So it's therapeutic for you.
1,000,000%.
Exactly.
Very hard to live without it. When I stopped making music for two years, I would love to see like my cortisol levels on a graph. I guarantee you.
So even if it's not something that you necessarily use as like a profession or something to master in as like your job, it can at least be something to contribute to your life and probably make you just an overall better person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm in school right now, I'm not going to get a get in a flow state from chemistry class, or, you're a babysitter, you're not going to...
I hear you.
Yeah, or like, trust, if you're a babysitter, I hear you. You can't really get into a flow state there. Find your avenue. But I think something I want to go back on is the potential of having an occupation that... I don't even like the word occupation. You have an avenue to make money through something that you can get into a flow state with. Like for Post Malone making music. It's like the people that you really know, they are able to get into these flow states, create something incredible, and then, or as Elizabeth talks about from Eat, Pray, Love, she was able to get into these flow states to write this book and then have it be her profession.
Yep.
I think that's such a cool concept.
I feel like that's the meaning of life.
Do you think we're in a flow state right now?
Yeah, probably.
I think
I haven't really... It's weird. It's like once you talk about it, it's like you kind of break the fourth wall. Great, now I'm out of it. Thanks, Shannon. No, but I think we've had a lot of these conversations on our balcony where we're just flowing and talking about things. So absolutely. I think we're definitely to some degree, some level of flow. There are 7 levels of flow, so we're definitely...
Holy shit, that's a lot of them.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Which one are we in right now?
I don't know.
Oh, cool. No, I had a cool thought. When you're in this flow state too, it allows... So what made me think of this thought was you talking about us on the balcony and the conversations we have.
Okay.
That experience that we've had, us just talking, have it be on the balcony with some coffee or by the pool, on vacation with a tequila drink, the conversations that come from that inspired this podcast.
Facts.
So it's something that Elizabeth Gilbert also talked about, was how these ideas essentially have a life to them or an energy to them. And me and Zachariah talked about this as well. And when you put yourself in a certain position, probably in an alpha state of flow, these ideas are more able to literally enter your consciousness.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. I talk, and this podcast is going to have to be like 7 different podcasts because this topic is so big.
For sure.
But I talk about when I took a break from a lot of substances and then I went back in, and one of the first thoughts I had was, wow, I feel like I'm accessing new information. And I feel like different thoughts are entering my head. I've tapped into some different stream. So exactly right. Once you go into a flow state, you're accessing different ideas. You're accessing the mastermind or the universe or whatever. And there's also that kind of trippy, awesome, but probably true idea that there's all these ideas circulating in the universe or greater mind, whatever you want to call it. And they'll enter someone's mind. And if they don't take action on them, the idea leaves that person's mind, goes back into the eternal life thing, and it'll go into someone else's mind. There's a great story. Prince called, I think it was Prince. It might have been Michael Jackson. It might have been the other way around. But Prince called his engineer or whatever. He's like, I got this idea for the song. Like, I need you now. Engineer's like, it's 4 a.m. Like, fuck off. And he's like, no, I need this right now. I need you to come to the studio so you can record me because I'm afraid it's going to enter Michael Jackson's head and he's going to take my song.
And what happened?
They recorded the song.
Do you know what song it was?
I don't know what song it was.
I would love to know.
I know. I don't know what song it was.
That's crazy that you just said that because the book that Big Magic, which I was reading this morning, it's so funny how it perfectly intertwines with this podcast. Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert was talking about how she had this idea for a book. It was this woman who falls in love with her boss, and her boss is married, and there ends up being this huge project out in the Amazon jungle, and she needs to go out there and solve the issues that the project is having. And it's also a love story. Kind of crazy idea, right?
Okay.
There's a lot going on there.
Okay, yeah, a lot going on.
And she befriended this other writer a couple of years before, and they would only see each other every couple of years. And she had this idea about 2 years prior to seeing her friend, and she kind of dropped the ball on that story and on that book, and she just wasn't able to make it work. She said her life got really hectic. I think she might have had a kid or gotten a divorce or who knows what. Life happened. And she said that she wasn't able to complete that book, but she loved that story so much. It just she wasn't able to make it happen.
Yeah.
And she met with her friend, Anne Pratchett, I believe it is, who is another very well-known author. And she was sitting with her the first time they've seen each other in 2 years. It was only her second time seeing this woman in her life. And they would write letters to each other, and they both knew that they had this idea about writing a book about the Amazon. And so as soon as they sat down, Anne was like, so you need to tell me, what is your book on the Amazon. She's like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like, let's talk about yours because I'm not writing mine. She's like, no. It was your idea first. Like, I want to hear about this. You know where I'm going with this. So Elizabeth tells Anne what her Amazon story was going to be. She's like, so what's yours about? And Anne fucking goes, that's exactly what my book is about. Yeah. And they're just so like spooked by this. And she said that Anne was a very practical woman, like was kind of a little bit more realistic, but even she was like, what the hell? And they realized that at the moment, around the same time where Elizabeth stopped writing that book, Anne got the idea. And it was around the same time where they kissed. Not in a romantic way, like a friend way. Oh. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
It's an insane story. So I truly believe that. But it's also interesting, and I don't want to get too off track with these ideas going to Brain's topic, but it's so cool. I think it's really interesting that these two authors who probably get into similar states both had this idea. And it was almost like it was in Elizabeth's brain, and then she wasn't able to make it happen. So it was like, you're not making it happen, and literally went to Anne.
Well, check it out. Let's bring it back home. Talking flow states and all that stuff. There are plenty of studies that show if people are in the same room and they all get in a common state, I believe it's usually the alpha state. I'm sure the theta state too, which is a little deeper. But there are so many cases of people being in a room, all coming together with the same idea. Or some person like emanating some story without speaking, everyone has the same idea. Or very anecdotal, us on the top of Mount Zion, me thinking a color and you getting it wrong, and then being like, all right, let me take it one step further. Let me think of a name, and you getting the name exactly right, including the spelling, and it's a spelling that can have two, or a name that can have two spellings.
That was wild.
It's crazy to think about, but at the same time, you got to think
it's so fun to play around with, though.
Yeah, it's fun to play around with, and there's scientific evidence, science being just facts, like studies. Like it sounds crazy, it's hard to believe because no one's taught you that, especially when you're younger, but it works.
It really does work.
Yeah.
And I think this is an important message for anyone that really wants to be a master at something as well. And something that I have just started to think about was, do you think people like, I think absolutely, but Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, what are their flow states? Because they are clearly the best at what they do in a sense. So do they have flow states? And if so, what are they?
That's a great question. I don't really know what Elon does.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's more engineering based or leadership based. I'm assuming what he does is really look at some of the sciences and try to figure out some engineering problems, but probably has engineers to do that. So I really don't know. Same thing. I feel like Steve Jobs is a marketing guy.
Yeah.
So he was probably just thinking of new ways to market certain segments and different products. Maybe he was coming up with different product ideas. And Bill Gates, I feel like Windows hasn't done shit in the past.
Yeah.
So Microsoft hasn't done anything. Maybe it's because I'm just not involved with Microsoft outside of my Windows computer, which I feel like...
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is their focus at the prior moment.
They must be doing something else.
For sure.
I really don't know.
But you get my example.
Yeah, every CEO... That's what's weird about being a CEO is you have so many different jobs.
For sure. For sure.
So they probably just be in flow being the CEO.
Right. Kind of just like, probably big ideas, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I think they would use flow states to have big ideas. And to get off the idea of just flow states, I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast with Post Malone, and they were talking about how either some of their greatest sessions, some of Post Malone's greatest sessions, and some of their greatest ideas came from moments where they were either drunk or high.
Yeah, let's talk microdosing. I remember...
Microdosing?
Well, I watched that. We might be referencing different points of that podcast, but I watched an hour of that podcast, and I remember Post said, some of my best sessions are when
I heard
just enough beers, and I've had just enough of the mushroom chocolates where I'm just really in the state, I'm a vessel for some beautiful song.
I think that is such a cool point, and it's just interesting because we just mentioned 3 different things. Have it be weed, alcohol, or psychedelics, which are much more extreme than just the caffeine flow state or the natural high flow state.
Yeah.
So when would you say, obviously we don't recommend like overdoing any of these things, but how can they be used in moderation for a creative, productive purpose?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. First and foremost, disclaimer, neither of us are doctors. Consult your healthcare professional before attempting
I honestly don't know anything about this, truly. Just some experience.
Look, everything has, all right, first of all three of those things we mentioned are sourced from nature. Not to say that nature is all good for you, because you can eat a berry and die, but it's not like we're talking with synthetics. They're all things that man and animals have probably ingested at some point.
Yeah.
Definitely have ingested. So let's start with caffeine, because that's probably the most common one.
Yes.
I think second and second most, it's really important to know what you need and where you're at, but not rely on them.
Mm-hmm.
So caffeine is one of those amazing but nasty little things that is so addictive. It's so awesome. I think I may be more sensitive to caffeine withdrawal than other people, because every time I don't have a day with any caffeine, I'm just like, it's a wash. I don't get anything done that day. I have a headache, and I'm just an asshole to everybody. But you got to be able to play around with your intake. So same thing with like weed. If I could only work when I'm high, I'm not that valuable, because then I'm always relying on that.
Exactly, you're relying on
That's terrible. That's not a good place you want to be, because then you're not even your true self. You're not sourcing those new information. You're just always in that state.
Right.
And then you're not even getting high or on caffeine anymore. You're just getting back to baseline. So if you're a coffee addict, right? Let's use this. This is very personal to me. This past month, I've been playing around with caffeine intake. So
let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's backtrack a little bit. I was, it was probably a month and a half ago, and I was doing really, really well for a couple of weeks, just crushing, feeling great. And I'm very sensitive to my own emotions, and if I'm not feeling good, like I want to know why. And I'm an energy snob. Like I need to be in the right state. If I'm not, I get angry. So for like 3, 4, 5 days, I just felt like I was in this rut, and I was like not myself, and I didn't have like my energy that's like magnetic and gets people going and attracts good things. Like I just didn't have that. And I woke up randomly. I went to bed at like midnight, and every now and then this happens. It's pretty cool. I love when it happens. I'll wake up at 5 a.m., either 5 a.m. on the dot or 5:30 on the dot. And I woke up. Sometimes I go back to bed. Sometimes I know I need to just ride it out. So I got up. I was at my house, and I just started walking around the neighborhood, probably like 20 minute walk. I was probably in flow state. And I didn't have any coffee or anything. I just walked. And I wrote down a few points. One of the points I wrote down was take every substance away. So it wasn't until 10:30 that day that...
So this specifically was when you weren't feeling super great.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling super great. I woke up at 5 o'clock. I went on a walk. I was like, I need some ants. I need something to like get me back, right? So I wrote just stop having coffee, take away... I put a lot of nootropics in my coffee. So take away L-theanine, tyrosine, any kind of nootropic you're taking, marijuana, alcohol, all gone, just all gone. And I did that it was till like 10:30 a.m. that day, where I was chilling. Keep in mind, I have like 4.5, 5 hours sleep.
Right.
And I'm working and I'm feeling good. And then I started to get like the caffeine headache. And I was like, okay, I could do this one of two ways. I can completely just nothing for a week, or I can continue to get stuff done, just lower my dosage of caffeine.
Yeah, and that's what you did, just like slowly at a time.
Yes. Last year I did, it seems like it happens every summer, but I completely took away caffeine. I was useless for a week. I had vicious headaches. It was awful. It was anyone who's had a caffeine addiction has had to do that. It's awful. It's really, really difficult. It's one of the hardest drugs to kick, because it is a psychoactive drug. Anyway, I had half a dose at 10:30, and it was just black coffee. I got rid of
half a dose. What was that?
Oh, instead of 3 scoops of coffee, I did a scoop and a half of coffee. It was half the caffeine.
Gotcha.
Got rid of the caffeine, withdrawal, et cetera, et cetera. So I did this for like 2 weeks, just like lowering. Eventually, it was like I'd have 1 sip of coffee. That would be done. I never actually made it down to 0 milligrams of caffeine, because I didn't really want to. But the reason I did this is, and now that looking back on this, I think the reason I felt in that rut is because I was used to having, a cup of coffee, maybe there's some THC in there, and maybe there's some nootropics in there, because I just started doing the nootropic thing like pretty recently. So, I got L-theanine, which is helps you focus, reduce stress, all these things working for me. And I think my body had built up a tolerance to all 4 of those things. This is my theory. So I wasn't getting a caffeine high because I was just fending off withdrawal, right? And I wasn't getting any kind of theanine high because I've had theanine for a month straight, no tyrosine high, and no THC high. So all of a sudden, where I think like I'm gonna have access to all these cool things, I have nothing, and I'm just like, what's going on?
Which can contribute to you not feeling so great.
Yeah, and it almost made me anxious. It's like if you took like 6 shots and you're like, all right, let's get drunk, and you're just at the bar, you're sober. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Been there.
Yeah, that would. Oh my
god. This past week or so.
Yeah, I know you've been on a bender, but to kind of bring some of this stuff home. Once I started cutting all that stuff out, it became way easier for me to understand, like, all right, I'm averaging 20 milligrams of caffeine a day. That's my baseline. It helps me feel like myself. It helps me get stuff done and motivated without any of the nasty side effects. Cool. Whether that's a cup of green tea or mushroom mud water coffee for all my mushroom guys out there. That giving me a baseline makes it so easy to say, all right, I'm at 20. I want a little extra kick of caffeine today. I need some extra energy, extra get shit done mood today. Let me have a little bit more caffeine.
Yeah.
And I'm a numbers guy. I like to be very precise. So I know exactly how much I've had for the most part. If I have 1 cup of a certain tea, I'm like, all right, I'm at 14. I need like 2 to get back to baseline. You know what I mean? And you could start to play around with that.
So can you talk about a little bit what the problem might be with someone who's like, all right, I'm getting my caffeine at 20, but then you're kind of flatlining. All right, I'll go up to 40 milligrams. What's the problem with just continuously just being like, all right, well, now I'm having 3 large cup of coffee to get my kick in the morning?
Let's stick on caffeine and coffee because I think like 90% of Americans or something have caffeine, which is great. It's probably why American society's like, get stuff done, like build. But what happens is, so caffeine has a half-life of, I believe, 8 hours and a quarter life of 12 hours. So what often happens is, and here's a cycle that so many people fall into. I've fallen into it. It sucks. It's an awful cycle. Yeah. It makes you anxious. It fucks up your sleep, and you just can't get anything done. So let's say you wake up, you have a cup of coffee. Let's say you have a bad night of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, you're feeling tired. 9 o'clock comes around, all right, cup of coffee. It's like, all right, working for 2 hours, 11 o'clock, feeling tired, cup of coffee again. I didn't sleep that great. 1 o'clock rolls on, another cup of coffee. And then let's say like 3 o'clock, I need my final push. Give me, I'll take a half cup of coffee, right? So you've had 3.5 cups of coffee from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. What that means is if you're going to try to fall asleep at 11 o'clock p.m., half of that caffeine from your 3 o'clock cup of coffee is still in your system.
Right.
When you're trying to fall asleep. And caffeine literally tells your brain, hey, don't fall asleep, stay awake. So obviously that's an issue. Right. So when you're trying to fall asleep,
you might be sleeping like shit.
Yeah, if you're trying to fall asleep with that amount of caffeine in your system, it's going to mess up your sleep. And then what's going to happen, you're going to wake up and you're like, wow, I did not sleep great. I need coffee. And you're going to get into this terrible cycle, and it's awful. Once you see it, once you understand it, it's just so painful. And I highly recommend that if you're drinking coffee, if you're trying to go to bed at midnight, stick with the 12-hour rule. Ideally better. If you're trying to go to bed at midnight, don't drink caffeine past 12 p.m.
Yeah.
Because it's about 12 hours, you're going to have a quarter left. You're still going to have it in you. Basically always going to have caffeine in you because it just takes like a full day to get out of your system, I believe. So just don't drink coffee too late and you're good.
Yeah, right. So the solution is, as it always is, some balance. And something else that I think is important to touch on is the reason why we love coffee and the power of coffee is to get that kind of kick, that kind of life high that I was talking about, that super boost of energy. And Michael Pollan, who wrote the book, This Is Your Brain on Plants, and has studied a lot on food, plants, psychedelics, and he was talking about how he took 3 months off of coffee, just stopped, and said it was extremely difficult. But that first sip of coffee after 3 months, he said it was literally psychedelic.
Yeah.
which is really cool. And I'm not saying anyone needs to get to that level, just quick, cold turkey, 3 months, but kind of just do a check-in and realize, what are the benefits I'm really receiving here? Am I getting the full effects of this coffee, or am I kind of just cruising at a kind of a flat line with this?
Yeah.
And just kind of using it to be at baseline, which isn't exactly where you want to be as a super performer, even just overall happy person.
Yeah, because then you're not getting the benefits. And
Exactly.
Brain scans to show that the person who's never drank coffee has like the same brain pattern as someone who has their first cup of coffee a day as an addict. So it's just getting you back to baseline.
Exactly. So I think that's coffee. I think that was a really interesting point on coffee. And if you were to summarize kind of your experience, what would that be with this coffee experiment?
One of the best decisions I've made was to move my caffeine intake around. That's such a good question, and it's so nuanced. But to really sum it up, I would recommend, if you feel like, wow, I've been drinking coffee for like 2 years straight, I've never done this, I've never even thought about this. Like my dad, I swear my dad does not even get caffeine high. He just same amount of coffee every day.
Yeah.
And to sum it up, take a week and just start playing with your intake.
Yeah,
so
do a half cup.
Do a half cup. What I did was I did a half cup, quarter cup, eighth cup, 16th cup. And then I would just basically, I think I was doing tea after that or something. And then after a week or two, I'd join a cup of coffee as a treat, get all the psychoactive benefits. But then the next day, I'd be like, I'm not going to get that full cup again. I'm going to half cup.
So going forward, do you think you will just constantly mix it up? Some days full cup of coffee, some days half, some days tea, or some days the mud water, which has how much caffeine in it?
14 milligrams.
Compared to a full cup of coffee, which is
100.
Right. So just mixing it up.
Yeah, I think forever at this point. I don't think I'm ever going to get in the routine again of every day I need to have my coffee. Every day I need to have caffeine, most likely.
Yeah.
There will probably be a point in my life, maybe in my 40s, where I'm like, I'm going to go on a caffeine cleanse. Probably a little bit later than that, honestly. But now being 26 and handling a shitload of projects and building everything, not the time to get off caffeine for me. I just don't see the value. So I'm always going to be changing my caffeine intake.
So if you're listening to this and it sounds interesting to you, definitely try it out and let us know how it works for you. I'm intrigued. I think it's something that's not really touched on that much. I think a lot of it comes from the media and just America being America with how we market things. Coffee is, America runs on Dunkin',
Yeah. One final note about coffee. As someone who loves coffee and supports people drinking coffee and using caffeine to their advantage, caffeine and coffee is one of the greatest businesses ever made because it is probably one of the most addictive drugs on the face of the planet. And we give it to our kids. And it's very hard to get off of it. It's painful to get off of. It is incredibly cheap to make. And you can upsell it for more than 10x of what you're making it, right? Starbucks.
So good work. Good work, coffee business. Yeah. And one point I'd like to make on coffee is that if you are a coffee enthusiast, I highly recommend upgrading your bean. Just quick shout out to Bulletproof Coffee. That coffee has by far given me the greatest coffee highs and flow states and energy boosts.
Yeah. One final note on coffee.
Oh God, we love it.
Yeah, it's great. But one thing to know that not a lot of people talk about is the source of your coffee is very important. The reason, if you have a really bad coffee crash, you're probably having shitty coffee. Yeah. And it's because of mold toxins. So what
percent of coffee beans have mold toxins?
I don't know.
I think it's an insane amount.
I think
it's like the average bean. You need to find a organic Colombian bean. Yeah. And if it's not that, then
a lot of the coffee from South America is good. Yeah. Colombia specifically, it has some of the best coffee. If you get it organically grown and fair trade and all that stuff. I think it might still have some mold toxins in there because it's just like,
if you're looking for a brand, Bulletproof is where it's at for sure.
Bulletproof is definitely, I definitely recommend it. I will start playing around with other ones because why the hell not? But yeah, stuff that comes
there's
from
other ones out there.
Yeah, a lot of the coffee. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm assuming like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks don't get their coffee from organic Colombia. Yeah. So if you are a coffee drinker, even if you want to keep drinking the same amount of coffee every day, maybe investigate some higher quality coffees and
right.
different
Just because
kinds of
you
coffees.
enjoy the benefits that coffee brings, and there are higher levels to that, just as there's higher quality weed, tequila, food that provide better experiences. There's also higher quality coffee, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And just, I'm going to summarize coffee real quick. I think that everything we're going to talk about here, flow states, coffee, alcohol, weed, psychedelics, any kind of altered state, like anything that is powerful in this world has its pros and its cons. And I think it's important to just realize the power of it. And if you're not getting the true power of it, then maybe switch it up.
Yeah.
So let's move on from coffee. Something we were talking about a little bit earlier was the Joe Rogan podcast with Post Malone. And they were talking about essentially getting lit and using that creatively. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know you and I, like I was talking about earlier, we would sit by the pool, have a couple tequila drinks, you know, we'd be having a good time, be in the sun, and we would just be talking. And I swear that, like, we come back from our vacations with like 4 different like life-changing ideas. So why do you think that happens?
Oh, what a great question. Yeah, I'm a big fan of getting lit. I think it's very valuable for business. Very, very valuable. So let me give you a weird answer at first and then bring it back home. So we live in the modern world where there's computers, there's internet, there's phones, all this awesome stuff. But we're new to it. We are, straight up, everyone give yourself a pat on the back right now. Because this generation, I don't care when you were born, this generation, people who live in 2021 are fucking pioneers.
Yeah.
Nobody has dealt with internet. Nobody has dealt with 4 and 5G.
Yeah.
Having a smartphone that's as smart as this. Having all this stuff online. Zoom calls, COVID, all that stuff.
A lot going on.
Nobody has had to deal with this.
Yeah.
For the most part, everybody before us up to the last 200 years is pushing it. But I think 200 years ago, all that back.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Not on their damn phone.
Right.
So think about the way they used to work.
Yeah.
And we should probably wake up, you go to work, you come back. Right? Let's skip all that part about work and let's think about what happened after work. Outside of the fact that before water filtration got good, people would usually drink alcohol because it was
they would
safer.
give it to their kids.
Yeah, exactly. So actually,
they
let's
would
go
give
down
children
that road.
hard cider for breakfast.
Yeah, which is...
This was a very long time ago. This was before the Prohibition.
This is the 1600s. And well,
when water
wasn't safe to drink. That's where you would get diseases. And if you fermented it, it would remove those diseases. And then eventually we figured out you can just boil it. And then
Incredible.
You don't got to be drunk all the time.
Fuck.
But, so let's think about this for a little bit. Let's go really, really, really far back to tribal times.
Yeah.
You're going about, you don't even have a job. Your job is, you do. Your job maybe is to get berries or maybe it's to go kill a boar or build a house
Make
or
a blanket.
build a tent or whatever, right? Or build, beds, et cetera, et cetera. You're building your society one way or the other. And after the day...
Kid Nation style.
Kid Nation, baby. That show sounds lit. I need to watch that. I need
Daniel,
to get in an altered state with you.
Me and my brother watched the... Oh my God, this is so off topic. We'll go back. Me and my brother Daniel sat down on the couch and watched a recap of the entire Kid Nation season, the only season
without me?
That existed. It came up in conversation, and Daniel's really quick to go on YouTube and find it. So we sat there and laughed for 15 minutes. That show was absurd. They were creating, as you said, they were creating their community and their their nation in a sense.
That's hilarious.
But we can go back to
I'm gonna have to watch that at some point.
I'll watch it with you again.
Really?
It's that good.
All right, deal.
It's that good.
But
Kid Nation.
Anyway, so we're talking about your original point of basically getting lit, and how does that really relate to getting stuff done?
Not even getting stuff done. That's a stretch. I would say it's really great for
ideas.
Ideas for ideas. Yeah.
I mean, I was down the Cape, and then we went down south to Carolina and Georgia. I've come back with I've never been more organized in my life. I'm writing down all my goals and making sure I'm on pace for my week and subdividing all that stuff. That's great. And I attribute that to taking time off. But anyway.
And being lit.
So we're in the tribal times. What happens when the sun falls? There's no electricity, right? Everything's dark. What do people really do? you go out by the fire, and depending where you're located, you might have a drink, you might have a smoke, you might have tobacco, you might have marijuana, you might have alcohol, you might have ayahuasca, you might have all these different plant medicines, right? And these plant substances. And I really think that's ingrained in us as human beings. Like, we were not designed to work on a computer 16 hours a day. Look at, if we really were, our necks would be shaped like this. And we would just like always be like perpetually looking down, right? We're not designed to do that.
And that's an interesting point, because something that Michael Pollan, the guy who wrote on This Is Your Mind on Plants, was talking about, was how if we weren't meant to alter our state, get high in some way, shape, or form, then those things wouldn't have continued to exist. The people who were doing those things would have died, and essentially it's existed in evolution for a reason. So that really inspired him to go into all this research, is why do these things stick around?
Because they have their benefits.
Yeah.
They're addicting. But what does addicting really even mean? It just means it's good and you like the benefits.
Yeah. I'm
addicted to work.
Me too.
Right. But I think it is hardwired in our human nature.
Yeah.
I think we're designed, and humans aren't the only ones to do this kind of thing. Look at dolphins, who are, I think they might be one of the smartest animals. I don't know if they are the smart. They might be like one of the smartest mammals or something. I don't even know if they're a mammal. But point is, they have a very evolved brain, and they get high on pufferfish.
Really?
Yeah, they find
Often?
a pufferfish.
Like this is like a hobby of theirs?
Yeah.
Really?
They'll swim down to the depths. They will find a pufferfish, and which are toxic. They can kind of kill. I think they can kill people, and they'll put it in their mouth. And pufferfish is normally like kind of flat, and then it'll puff up, and they'll spit it out. And then another dolphin will do the same thing, and they'll go on their belly, and they'll start like
really
like laughing like dolphin style. And yeah, they literally get
That's
high
awesome.
on pufferfish. And it's interesting to think, the more evolved your brain is, the more you're craving altered states.
Right.
You know, it's just something that I think is hardwired into our brain. I think our brain wants altered states.
So know how there's the theory that apes, or like our old ancestors in terms of evolution, apes or the cavemen, took psychedelics, which therefore allowed their brain to expand, which could be, as this is a theory, one of the reasons for human consciousness.
Yeah.
And if we take that point, do you think dolphins will ever reach the point of consciousness?
There's just like dolphin warriors
Yeah.
just roaming the sea. They
Yeah,
have
just coming up
boats.
with ideas and
Yeah, they have whole societies.
businesses and
Yeah, they built Atlantis.
architecture.
Yeah, there's like truck driving dolphins that like deliver packages.
It's a whole city.
Oh my god. I don't. Well,
The planet.
here's the thing. You give anything enough time,
Yeah.
anything can happen.
Exactly. Who knows if the planet will last that long?
Yeah, who knows? My initial answer was no, because they're getting. I don't think it's a psychedelic high that they're getting. I think it's more of a stoned high.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I really don't know. I'm not a dolphin.
I think as humans, or in the past as ape or cavemen, the fact that we were above water probably gave us a lot more access to. But then again, marine life is pretty crazy. Like the biodiversity in the ocean.
We don't know shit
This
about
is a
marine
crazy
life.
comment.
Yeah, there
I
might
like
be
it.
like walking fish on the
Yeah.
depths of the ocean that are all just like they're
Talking
getting
shit
high
about
on
us.
coral and shit like that.
Yeah.
For real, like you can't even see any like
I know.
really the deep sea.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Oh, and there's
anything.
so much of the ocean that isn't explored yet.
Yeah, we don't know any of that stuff.
It's interesting though, but it's a great case point for altered states expanding your brain. And something that I think is really cool about altered state, have it be caffeine, alcohol, weed, where it takes your brain, it's that neuroplasticity where your brain goes to it, it'll never go back to its original state. And so therefore, if you've experienced those states, it still exists in you in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to be like worried about work when you're 9 tequila drinks in and
Yeah,
you
of
know
course.
an edible or
Pass
something.
out on the
And-
floor.
Yeah, no,
Part of you.
well, whatever, you're feeling good, you're buzzing.
Disclaimer:
off
we
alcohol.
definitely don't recommend overdoing anything.
No.
Yeah.
Please just know where you gotta be.
Yeah, safe limits are the key.
When I
here.
have no tolerance, I take like 2 drinks, and I'm like, I'm blackout drunk. But the point is, it's hard to feel stressed when you have enough substances in you that make your brain feel good. And when that happens, you block out all the other nonsense and you become focused on everything that's not what you've been focusing on. And your brain expands to different points and gets different information. And then eventually you sober up. But your brain never forgets those ideas. And then sure, you come back to the same stuff you've been doing over and over again, but you literally have a different brain than you did last time you looked at that.
Crazy.
So
the brain's fucking wild.
Yeah, how can using these things not be beneficial? Like it's a fact that if you're looking at the same problem over and over and over again and you get stuck, if you keep looking at it like 24 hours a day, you're most likely not going to solve it. Like
in the same state too.
Yeah, in the same state.
Yeah.
Like it's just you need some kind of different information.
Yeah. I think something that you and I do really well is we realize when something is a problem that needs to be solved and allowing ourselves to get in the kind of state where we can either talk about it or sit down and figure it out. I think that's so valuable. Just recognizing when there's a problem to be solved and when you're not really in the state to solve it.
Yeah, I don't even try to do... I used to take phone calls in the morning, and then this year I just started telling people, like, hey, just don't... Nobody calls me in the morning anymore because I just don't take the calls. And it's because... like, I'm just not in the state to talk to people in the morning. What I'm in the state to do is create something, get something done that person who's calling me wants me to get done anyway. And if I take that call, first of all, I'm not going to be in a good state for the call. And it's going to piss me off that I can't focus on what I want to do because I had to take this call and then they want me to do something else. So I didn't even try to do a call if I'm not in the right state.
And I think just knowing where you're at and what your energy is most beneficial when acting towards. But something I want to get back to is you were talking about tribes and the tribal state and what they would do at night. I'm curious where your point was going with that.
Well, it's deep-rooted. My point is that it's deep-rooted in us to let go of work.
Right.
And when work was survival, which it was for a long time, we would tap out of that at night. Right now we're blessed. We have electricity, we have buildings, we have 9-to-5s and remote work and businesses that we run. And it doesn't necessarily shut off. The sun would shut off survival mode to an extent.
Right.
So it's hardwired in us for us to get our work done during the day, do what needs to be done to survive and build and grow, whether that's you're building a company or you're building a new home or a bed or, new canopy or something. And once that sun fades away, we let go. And a lot of the the people before us, like ayahuasca isn't new. People in South America and the Amazon have been doing ayahuasca for probably centuries.
Right.
There's all kinds of shit I don't even know about. I'm assuming you think the pyramids were built sober? Like they must have had something out there that was
or just the general idea of it. That man wasn't
some hape or something going on.
Something was involved.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's not new to us to let go and I think, Native Americans weren't having Bud Lights, but they were definitely smoking tobacco. I mean, I think the tobacco industry was not the industry, but there's so much use of that as far as I know.
For sure.
So don't feel bad about using some kind of altered state.
Absolutely.
Like we're designed to use it.
Absolutely. And use it to your advantage, I would say. And find a way that you can use it to your advantage. And something else that you were saying, Pat, we deserve a pat on the back because we have all these things. So what was your point about that?
My point is that no human being outside of our last really 30, 20-ish years has, to some extent, 10 years, has had to deal with all this technology.
Right,
This technology is hard to deal with
the
sometimes.
access to work 24/7 or to look at a screen 24/7.
Think about how many generations are before us.
Right.
Right? And they didn't have a choice. It gets dark out. How are you going to, you might have a candle. How are you going to do work?
Right.
You can't. You're a farmer. It's night out.
Exactly.
It's wolves and shit.
Or even when there was electricity, there wasn't that communal technology that allowed you to work with your coworkers, or your job was to be a farmer, so it was too dark out to go do that.
Yes. I feel like back then it must have been easier than ever. At night, let me go to the fireplace and read a book and have like a cup of tea, right? Exactly. That must have been so easy. Like what else is there to do?
Exactly.
Now it's easier than ever, especially if you're an entrepreneur, to just keep working 24/7 and never take a break and develop this consciousness that's like, I grind until I die.
Exactly.
I will sleep when I am dead. No, that's fucked up. You literally get less done by doing that. Like work 40 hours, take 40 off. You'll get more done than you work 80 hours to an extent. Sometimes you got to put in those 80-hour weeks. But if you're going to do that, like, you got to take a fucking break. Like, I bet Elon Musk would say the same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And we are so unique. And we need to respect our heritage.
Absolutely.
We need to respect our heritage. It's nighttime
parents. Even our parents, they obviously had electricity, but at least my parents would go to work. They'd work, and then they'd come home at 5 or 6 or whatever their scheduled hours were. And there was that kind of, you're working and then you're not time.
Yeah. And they would have dinner. They would communicate with each other, enjoy their family time.
Yeah. Probably
play some board games, read, and do things that tapped you out of that work mindset.
Right.
So.
And I think that's very beneficial, even if it's, obviously there's the 9 to 5, and then as entrepreneurs specifically, it can be hard to tap out of conversations, computers, working on our businesses versus, say, someone who works in a specific office, and once they leave it there. Like a doctor or a nurse, they leave their work there. I'm sure emotionally they take stuff and have calls here and there, but for the most part, a lot of jobs offer that kind of difference, and I think it's important to realize the value of that and take that off time to expand in a way that you can't when you're in there. When you're on the laptop working on something, it's hard to come up with big ideas. It's hard to solve some crazy solutions. But when you kind of give yourself some time, some space, and potentially something that takes the edge off or kind of relaxes you in a different way, that's when you're able to get access to new information.
Yeah, and these substances that we're talking about are often performance enhancers in some different way. Like alcohol, for me, is a social performance enhancer. I can talk to anybody when I'm like one drink in. I can meditate easier if I'm stoned, right? We can go down that road.
You can get into work better with a little caffeination. Yeah.
So when we're talking about these things you're just talking about, like we need to tap out, and to go back to that example of someone worked like our parents, they worked a 9 to 5, came back, they read a book, they played board games, whatever. Let's say they were dead sober. That's all well and good, but that's like baseline. Now imagine if they did that once a week, but once a week they did, let's say they smoked a joint once a week, right? All of a sudden they would have different ideas. And the same thing is applicable to us, except we just need to be able to tap out of that. And tap out of that 9 to 5, right? Absolutely. Or we need to know when to shut the lights off and when it's time to use these performance enhancing substances, because that's what they are. If you're always on them, we talk about tolerance and they no longer become performance enhancing, but you just need to know when to tap into them and when to use them to get that information.
The power of fun is real.
Ooh.
The power of fun.
That's deep, bro. That's deep.
Fun and travel. Oh, God. I think those two things combined have brought us some of our greatest ideas and also improved our relationship or created our relationship in a sense.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know if we'd be a thing without travel.
Yeah, I think it really defined, our values, and it created those conversations that really connected us on a deeper level. But I think that's an entirely different podcast.
It is, but travel is an altered state.
Oh, absolutely.
And my first business came out of travel. I wrote the whole business plan on a notepad on my way back from Ireland. And then I spent the next couple months / couple years building it and starting it. And it did great. And I know for a fact I would not have had that information, that thought flow into my head if I had just sat in Saugus.
Absolutely.
No chance.
And even this podcast, is somewhat of an idea. I probably almost lost this idea. I straight up had it for so long, but wasn't acting on it. But it wasn't until I did a couple different trips. I went to Dallas with my brothers. There was a lot going on. I had my graduation, and I went to Miami with my friends. I kind of just had like a week and a half or two of kind of just not working, and I was coming back on the plane, and I had I think I was super hungover. I don't even know if I had any coffee. And I just had all these ideas. And I was like, I'm starting the podcast this week. And I got the name, and I had the ideas for the concepts and kind of what it would stand for. It's interesting what can come out of that. And I think that that's something to really value as either, just a person with, say, a normal job, a 9-to-5, but specifically as a creator and an entrepreneur, someone that does need to contribute big ideas. I think there can be the stigma that taking a vacation means you're neglecting your business, and that is absolutely not the case. I think our businesses grow every single time we travel.
Do you remember when we did the first podcast? It was the day after we went to Encore, got drunk, partied a little bit, and gambled.
And talked for like it was like the first time you and I had some fun in like a month or something.
Yeah, we've been grinding really heavy, and you had this idea for a minute, and then ironically, as soon as you let go, use some of these performance-enhancing substances responsibly.
Exactly.
The next day, it happened. It happened organically, and it wasn't hard to set up. And we did a great podcast that day.
Amazing podcast.
Yeah, and it worked out perfect.
Exactly. It just goes to show that having a little fun, letting loose, and also being on a level of litness where you can also remember the conversations you're having, and you can be intellectual about what you're doing and have those big ideas. It's like everything, it's always balance.
Yeah. I don't recommend getting addicted to anything or getting blackout drunk. I think getting blackout drunk's terrible for you.
Oh God, it's the worst.
Yeah,
kills.
Please do not do that. It's just terrible for you. But I think depending on your age and where you're at, and your existing health issues and all that, having a few drinks in a night, or having I would rather have, if I were allotted 7 drinks a week, I would rather have 3 and 4 2 nights a week, as opposed to do one every day.
Me too.
Because then I would get, which some people do, which is nothing wrong with that, or just those 7 drinks in one night. I think people recommend 4 to 5, so maybe 7. I'm not a doctor, but maybe 7's too high.
You're not?
No, I'm not. No, just love substances.
Yes, and a substance I want to talk about too, now that we're a little deep into the podcast, is our nootropics.
Ooh.
So I kind of just want to let you go with this. Can you give us a little background on, 1, what nootropics are, and 2, how you got into them?
Yeah, absolutely. So nootropics are anything that changes your brain state a little bit, anything that helps you perform in a different way. There's tons of them.
Is weed or alcohol a nootropic?
You could consider it. Some people consider nicotine a nootropic.
Let's go specifically more into the supplemental nootropics.
Yeah, that's what I plan on. So there's stuff that, look, alcohol deteriorate, or not specifically the alcohol. The ethanol created from alcohol deteriorates parts of your body and your brain over time. There's as much as I'd like to believe it has 0 negative effects on me. I know it does, but I also know that being super stressed in a social situation probably has equal or greater.
Or not connecting in social environments.
Exactly. Pick your poison, right? There are plenty of nootropics and substances that will give you an altered state without that backlash.
Right.
So I got into them. So one of my favorites is called L-theanine. I've recommended it to a few friends. They seem to enjoy it. I definitely enjoy it. I got into that recently this year. It was first introduced to me as medicine for my autoimmune when I was 8 or 9 years old, to help, because it was stress related. So I
forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot that you took it then.
Yeah, I did take it for a little bit.
I love that was recommended to you instead of some.
Well, that was definitely not the first thing recommended to me. Pills were the first, heavy medication. But eventually, I think one of my doctors was like, hey, you should try L-theanine. It seems like it spikes.
Good conversation.
Yeah.
Something that I want to say before you get into it is that what you're about to talk about, and either nootropics or supplements in general, are something that can be a great alternative to heavy medication.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, I had an autoimmune disorder when I turned 7. Happened overnight. I was a perfectly normal kid, as normal as I could be. Kids are all funky and not normal. But I was a perfectly healthy kid, and the next day I woke up with vicious, paralyzing OCD and Tourette's, like twitches and just, I couldn't even get dressed. It took me like an hour and a half to get dressed. It was just so hard to do anything. I couldn't walk to the car. Like I was debilitated.
How
I
long
was
did
crushed.
this last?
Huh?
How long did this last?
Severely, like the really, really bad stuff, like 4 to 5 years.
Which is a fucking long time.
It was a very long time. It got, but even like, I'd say age, that put me to about like 12, 13, middle schoolish. It was still very noticeable at that age. It was less noticeable in high school. And then I kind of kicked it around like it didn't kick it, like it's still in me today, but I kind of kicked it around age 18. I think, I can't confirm this, but maybe just like my brain likes to believe this, but I think smoking weed helped take me out of my mind enough that it just kind of numbed that a little bit, because it seemed to just be a lot less easier to say no to it. Like when you have any kind of twitch or compulsion, like it's really hard to say no to it, especially like one of my frat brothers, he had like a compulsive twitch and he just couldn't say no to it. I always bonded with him on that, because like it's just compulsive, like you can't stop it.
Did you ever talk about it with him?
I think so. Yeah, he hit me up the other day.
Really?
He hits me up all the Dave. If you fucking text me and I text you back, text me back after, you little fucker. Dude will like text me and then like just never get back to me. Whole other topic, but
Communication's a great one.
Communication is a great topic.
I like the role you're on here, though.
Huh?
I like the role you're on here.
Yeah,
I'm proud of you for talking about this.
Yeah, totally.
I think it can help a lot of people.
Yeah. But anyway, I think weed helped a lot. I was prescribed something, so it looked like it correlated a lot with stress. So when I'd be in stressful situations, I was just dead, just useless. So they gave me some like really, and there was no cure for this. I was one of the first cases, as far as I know. It's like very, very rare, I think is what they classify as the disease as. I had to go
What's
to specialists and
the official
shit. PANDAS is an acronym. It's spelled like pandas. Pancreatic autoimmune nerve disorder associated with streptococci, something like that. It was like some piece of strep got like stuck in me and like triggered. Yeah, it was some crazy shit. I didn't even know how. It literally happened overnight.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like I woke up and I was just like, oh my God, like something's wrong. So yeah, they gave me a lot of like heavy, I remember these little blue pills that would, they're supposed to like reduce stress and that kind of stuff. But I used to take them in applesauce because I couldn't swallow pills. But eventually I was just like, yeah, these aren't doing shit. Like I'm done. And then my parents wanted to give me something. So one of my physicians recommended theanine. And I didn't know enough about tolerances because I was 7 years old and nobody taught me about any of this shit. And people were more scared of it than I was. It was a terrible situation. But I took it for a while and it seemed to help. And then I felt the same thing as when I was taking the blue, heavier pills where I was like, it just wasn't doing anything. So now to come back to our original topic, theanine is, I was starting to feel a little stressed a couple of months ago. Usually just going into the summer, we just feel a little stressed, changing the seasons.
Yeah.
And I played around with it every now and then, and I noticed a lot of my nootropics that I would take had L-theanine in it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me just try theanine. So I did a lot of research, and it's a really cool supplement. It's an amino acid found in green tea and I think black tea too, but in much smaller quantities that you can get in a pill. And it just really, really works well with caffeine, but it works really well to if you have like a stress level and it goes up. There's I forget what it's called. I didn't even want to say what it is because it's totally wrong. There's an inhibitor in your body that will push that stress level down and kind of acts like a brake. So if you're stressed, that's like your body, I'm good. And what theanine does is helps reinforce that brake and just keep your stress down without making you tired. It actually makes you more focused, alert, and it just pushes that stress and cortisol down, which is evolutionary and not really that useful in the modern world, and can help you focus and feel calmer and better and have less autoimmune tics. And it's a great little supplement. So
awesome. So one, who would you recommend this to? Would you recommend this to anybody?
I would recommend this, and this is great full circle. I would recommend this to anybody who has caffeine, because theanine will drastically reduce any kind of caffeine hangover that you're going to have, or caffeine crash rather, because I don't know the science of it, But if you look at how coffee will spike your caffeine energy, like coffee's more of a burst, right?
Right.
Like quick, then kind of fades off. Whereas if you have green tea, it's way more steady. You don't necessarily get that jolt from green tea or black tea even though they have caffeine. Green tea has 30 milligrams of caffeine. I think black tea has 50. They're much more steady. It's more of a steady caffeine buzz. And I don't know which one it is. It might be theanine. I know Michael Pollan was talking about it. Tea has amino acids in it that are different from coffee that make it more spread out. So what I do and what I do for you and what I did for us this morning is I put in theanine into the coffee. So the reason I do this is, first and foremost, it helps focus incredibly well. So if I'm going to do work, I have theanine in me. It's a nootropic. It helps you focus. It's awesome. On top of that, it makes it so the caffeine crash is hardly there and makes me way less stressed. And it's just really useful. It's a really good complement to caffeine because especially coffee, especially not good coffee, can make you jittery. And this stuff will help you kind of counteract that. So it goes really well with caffeine.
Very cool. So how do you spell that for anyone that wants to give it a Google? And do you recommend any brands?
Yes, I do. L-THEANINE. L-theanine.
Cool.
As far as I know, the most pure form of theanine is called sun-theanine. And they isolated the amino acid in green tea, which is L-theanine, and they extract that and they make it into a powder. And there's different ways that you can get that theanine from the plant. And again, I'm not an expert, do your own research, but sun-theanine is apparently one of the best ones. I'm not even going to mention any brands right now because a lot of different brands will use sun-theanine, but I recommend going to the source and creators of sun-theanine and purchasing through them.
Cool.
Because if they're a partner of that official creator of them, they're going to be good. And with other supplement brands, you get people cutting shit and like not giving you the highest quality. So always go to the source if you can.
Cool. So that's L-theanine. We've done a little bit on, I think we've covered weed and alcohol in terms of creativity and utilizing it for that.
More to talk about there, but for the most part, yeah.
And then we've talked about caffeine. So let's go into another nootropic. I know there's a lot of them. We're not going to touch on all of them today, but how about you give your top 3 to 5? Totally up to you.
Yeah. In addition to, I don't do these every day. One of the reasons, again, to just tap back in, when I first started, I still deal with these tics every day. When I first started taking theanine, I remember telling you for like 2 weeks, I was like, they're just gone. This is great.
Right.
And then it all came back because my tolerance built up.
Right.
There's a tolerance to everything. It's really important to understand. So I don't do these every day, but on certain days, like today is a great day where we're creating content first thing in the morning. Caffeine, put a little L-theanine in there, and then a complement to theanine is L-tyrosine, Tyrosine, tyrosine. And that helps give you energy, helps your dopamine regulation, and it really pairs well with theanine. And theanine can make you feel very relaxed and very calm, which is great. But some people might associate that with tired. And tyrosine gives you a little bit of a boost. So all 3 of those, caffeine, tyrosine, and theanine, all really play well together. And I definitely recommend you at least play with them. I think that if you have a big day, maybe a big day presentation or something you want to create, something you want to do, that combo is awesome.
Important Zoom call potentially or an interview, maybe when you need a good amount of energy but some sort of balance and calmness within you.
Yes, absolutely. Those 2 go great. One that I haven't taken but I just want to bring up because I think the company who did this is awesome. I think they're really smart. Is this company called Mudwater that makes this, it's kind of like this mushroom tea, not that kind of mushroom, not a magic mushroom, like just fungi-based tea, a little bit of black tea in there. That's where all the caffeine comes from, and all these other things in there.
Lion's mane.
That's exactly what I want to talk about. So it kind of tastes like coffee, kind of not really. It tastes more like if you ever had watered down coffee or you didn't have enough coffee to make a full cup.
It's like a coffee tea.
Yeah, it's exactly. And one of the things that I think is awesome that they did is they put nootropics in the blend. So it's like a powder, and one of those nootropics is lion's mane, and it does something pretty similar to like the theanine tyrosine combination. I actually did theanine tyrosine in mud water today, and it seems to have gone great. So
you're doing great, sweetie.
Oh, thank you. But I just think that companies putting nootropics in drinks like that is super, super cool. Outside of that, there's a few blends out there that I would recommend people look into. I'm not familiar with every brand out there. There's tons of, I just do your own research, consult Reddit, consult the CEOs of these companies, like do your own research, make sure you're taking something good. There's some stuff from the Bulletproof brand that I like a lot. There's one in particular that I think is awesome for nighttime zen. So we talk about a lot of creative work gets done in the morning, but every now and then I crush at night. Every now and then I just destroy at night. And sometimes if I'm getting a little bit of that, but I want to amplify it, I'll take this supplement called Zen Mode, and it has theanine in there. It's got a bunch of other stuff in there. It's just this proprietary bulletproof blend. And it really calms you down, helps you focus without getting you amped up. Because like ideally you're taking this at night, you're getting zen. And it helps you sleep actually too. So usually when I take that, I can sleep really well the next day or that night. So Zen Mode from Bulletproof is great. There's a few other ones that are advertised to me all the time. Someone should check out Koala Mind. That one always gets on my news feed and social media. They might be terrible, but they have enough budget to advertise.
Yeah.
I know some.
That's how I found mud water.
Really?
These Instagram ads.
Yeah, mud water's great. But Joe Rogan used to be, well, he was big on Alpha Brain. I know a lot of people have side effects from Alpha Brain.
Really?
Yeah.
That's why it's important to do your research before you just buy something and start using it. And something else that I think is important to emphasize as well is that I think we definitely recommend implementing these things one at a time so you can really feel their effects if it's your first time trying them. Because if you mix together, Zen Mode with some tyrosine with another...
No, don't do that.
Yeah, you'll run into some problems.
Yeah. Introduce things one at a time. Like,
yes.
We were doing theanine for a month, and then I got tyrosine.
Right.
And then it still took me, I just got resveratrol.
Yeah.
And I haven't even touched that. It's just been sitting there because I'm not ready for it.
Yeah. You got to, and also you won't know, what's either making you feel good or not good, and kind of... Yeah. You need to have a controlled environment. You
got to know how... So the actual supplements themselves, I think, are the best way to go, to be honest with you. Like having... Because there's different... I have this one pill, it's 400 milligrams of theanine. I have another one, it's 175. Before I was putting 200 in each of ours. And now I'm like, but I don't need that much. 175, split it into 2 cups of coffee. That's great because I know exactly how it's going to hit me. Same thing with tyrosine, same thing with anything else I put in there. With Zen Mode's great. I have very minimal side effects from Zen Mode. There's another bulletproof supplement, nootropic, called Smart Mode. And Smart Mode is insane. And it makes you feel incredible for like 4 to 6 hours. And sometimes you just kind of die off from that and you're good. Sometimes, no matter how much water I drink, no matter how much sleep I have, I get a vicious headache and I can't do anything for the next 6 hours. So as great as that feels, I don't take it anymore because I don't want to risk having that headache and feeling all whack. It's like your energy goes to it and it just dies down. I don't want to play around with that. So for me, I'd rather just say, oh, Smart Mode is mainly using XYZ or Zen Mode is mainly using theanine. Let me just make my own nootropic. Let me try theanine. And then maybe I need something else. Maybe I try like a GABA supplement or something like that. So
I think we're nearing the end of this. We've hit a lot of awesome topics here. Yeah. I think to close it out, I think we should really emphasize again that when it comes to all of these things, all of these hard substances such as alcohol to a little bit less intense from supplements and maybe caffeine, just know what's right for you and really tune in to how certain things are having an effect on your mood, your performance, and your overall happiness day to day. I think that all of these things are so powerful, and as a species and really a majority of living things, we've always found a way to change our state, and it can be a very, very powerful thing. And at the same time, it's not something to be messed with in a sense. Definitely value the substances and also you and your body.
Totally. Yeah, well said. Sobriety is sexy until it's not, in my opinion. Like, I've gone, weeks with, I should do sober October, this October, but I've gone a few weeks with just doing absolutely no substances.
Yeah.
And it's great. I get a lot done. Exactly. I feel good. But then there's that craving, and maybe it's the addict mind, or maybe it's just my evolutionary mind that says, hey, like, use some THC. Mm-hmm. I'll give a great example. I didn't do anything for a while, and I was like, I forget what problem I was trying to solve. I think it was music related. And I just couldn't solve it. I just couldn't. I was like feeling frustrated by it. And I was, like, fuck it. I'm going to take 2 puffs of my little vaporizer, and I'm going to watch some Rick and Morty for 21 minutes. And I just remember I was like, wow, I feel great. And I know that's just the weed telling my brain I feel great, right? But I did it, and by the end of that, I was like, really enjoyed the episode. I felt great. I felt happy. And I did some yoga after, and I think I went to bed, and then I woke up and I had the problem solved.
Exactly.
So
I
use
think,
it wisely.
Yes. Use wisely, play around with some things, because it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah. And I think that, the more experience you have with these things, the more you can learn what, works for you. Obviously when it comes to alcohol, we are huge tequila fans.
Oh yeah, we wore tequila shirts.
Shirts. Shout out Los Sundays for this fire shirt. Yeah. It says tequila kills the boredom. So I think it's just a matter of, also, tequila is the only alcoholic upper, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, we'll have a whole podcast
simply about tequila.
Different alcohols.
Yeah.
We should sample different alcohols throughout the podcast too.
And see how we feel.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I really like that idea. So thank you so much for coming on today. I think this was an incredible episode. Really, really, really informative. So anything else you'd like to end with?
Stay sober until it's not fun. Know your limits, and don't be a fucking idiot.
Much love, guys. Thank you.